You mentioned in your testimony about being here last year at this time. This time last year, too, there were 120,000 people who died because of our inability to staunch the flow of fentanyl, especially. The most recent data from CDC shows that from May 22 to May 23, for the first time in American history, over 112,000 Americans died from a drug overdose, 2,200 of those from my state of Kentucky alone. Fentanyl remains the primary driver of that increase in overdose deaths, and young Americans have been particularly hard hit. For teenagers, 84% of fatal overdoses involved fentanyl, almost all. Last week, Director Wray, the FBI director, was testifying here when he said that, quote, the last 2 years in a row, the FBI seized enough fentanyl to kill 270 million American people. There can be no doubt that a tragically high amount of narcotics are slipping through our southern border, and the border crisis created by this administration is a dream scenario for cartels. They've never had it so good. The department's budget submission has listed combating drug trafficking and preventing overdose deaths as a top priority, with multiple agencies and components within the Department of Justice implementing strategies to counter fentanyl. How are you assuring and ensuring that agencies don't silo their intelligence and that these efforts complement rather than inhibit each other?
It's a very important point, Mr. Chairman. Fentanyl is the deadliest drug threat this country has ever faced, both because it's extraordinarily cheap to make, extraordinarily profitable to sell, and because how often it can be fatal. As the DEA has said in its public affairs campaign, just one pill can kill. So the Justice Department and the government as a whole has an all-government and all-department approach to this question. And you're exactly right, we have to prevent any kind of siloing. So FBI, DEA, the marshals, OCDAF, the criminal division, the civil division, and our grants to local and state government law enforcement are all combined to work together to battle this scourge. It begins with the precursor companies in China. You can't make the fentanyl without the precursors. So we are doing everything we can. We have charged and indicted the precursor companies. The Treasury Department has sanctioned the precursor companies. The precursors then move into Mexico. We have I've personally traveled to Mexico 3 times. The Deputy Attorney General, I believe, has also traveled at least 3 times. Other high government officials have traveled to persuade the Mexican government to put controls on the precursors and to stop the precursors from coming in. In Mexico, we are working with the Mexican Marines and the Mexican Army to destroy the labs and to take down the cartels, and in particular to get assistance in the extradition of the cartel members who we have indicted in the United States. We have indicted dozens of members of the Mexican cartels. We have obtained successful extraditions of people like Ovidio Guzman, who was one of the Chapitos, the son of El Chapo. We've gotten some support in bringing these people into the United States. Then the next thing that happens is exactly as you say, it crosses our southern border. As the Secretary of Homeland Security has testified, most of this comes through the ports of entry crossing the border. And what's necessary at that point is for more money for the Department of Homeland Security. I hate to be here asking for money for another department, but if we're going to stop fentanyl from coming in, they need the large X-ray machines, the fast X-ray machines that can look at these trucks and these SUVs and these passenger cars as they come across the border. Then FBI picks, and DEA in the United States picks up the traffickers once they come into the United States. And in combined operations, including work from the marshals and the U.S. attorney's offices, investigates using the latest investigative tools and prosecutes. The DEA has, at the very end of the line, a public affairs campaign. We have to cut off the demand as well, and that's why we emphasize that one pill can kill. That's why I went to the DEA headquarters and met with the families, very kind of families that you're talking about. Young people who have died taking a pill they had
General,
no idea was fentanyl.
what percentage of your drug trafficking work, what percent is tied to illegal smuggling from Mexico?
Well, I can't give a number in that regard, but as I said, the vast majority of fentanyl comes into the United States, smuggled in trucks and cars coming across ports of entry. That's what the Department of Homeland Security has identified.
To be even clearer, would your counter-drug efforts be even more successful if we had complete control of our southern border?
If we had the X-ray machines and other investigative devices necessary to detect fentanyl as it was coming across the border, absolutely. If we could cut off that flow, that would vastly decrease. There will be other ways that people will try to get it in through the mail, through shipping, et cetera. But if we could cut off fentanyl crossing the border using these new technologies, that would make an enormous dent in the dangerous poison that is flooding our cities.
Last week, we had FBI Director Wray sitting in the seat you now occupy. He noted that he wished there was more cooperation from Mexico about drug trafficking. From a department-wide counter-drug perspective, what is the level of cooperation we are receiving or not from Mexico?
I would echo what the director said. I wish there were more cooperation. We are getting cooperation. We have had extraditions. They have destroyed some labs. They have reduced precursors coming into the country, but we need much, much more cooperation.
As I understand it, the current Mexican government has severely constrained DOJ's ability to work alongside their Mexican counterparts to disrupt the cartels. What is the department and this administration doing to restore full law enforcement partnerships with Mexican partners?
Yeah. So the FBI I think as the director testified, has been successful in setting up some vetting teams. I have personally gone to Mexico to speak with the Attorney General to re-up the degree of cooperation that had previously existed with the DEA. I would say I've not been completely successful in that effort yet, but I am persistent and I will not give up until the cooperation with DEA is as fulsome as possible.
There are people based on that lack of a border control who say that the Mexican government really is complicit with the cartels. Would you say that?
Well, I don't want to comment on that specifically. The cartels are enormously profitable. They have more money than some nation states, and there are places in Mexico where it is difficult to deal with the cartels. I will say that when Mexican law enforcement, and particularly the naval forces, the Marines, and the Army have gone to arrest people that we've extradited, this has come at enormous loss to them as well. I called the Secretary of the Navy there to give my condolences for the deaths of Marines in connection with the arrest of Ovidio. They have a very difficult job, as we do.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.